Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you today. And I missed last week. My wife and I were away on a vacation, and it was a little warmer there. I came back home, and oh my goodness, what is this? It's amazing how wimpy we Minnesotans can get when you're just away for a week. But it is good to see you, and I'm so excited about our speakers today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, and I'm going to tell you about what's coming up. But Jim and Patty Robinson are no strangers to Wooddale Church. They have been just such a blessing in our marriage and family ministries around here. Most of the couples who get married at Wooddale receive their premarital counseling through Jim and Patty. Not every one of them, but most of them do. And they have been just such a gift to us as young couples are preparing for marriage. Their passion for marriage is something that has reverberated throughout Wooddale Church. And so we have a marriage builders class on Sunday morning that began years ago. And the idea was we were going to start this class to minister to young families. And what we found out through that is that there were a whole lot of marriages that just needed attention and needed intentionality. And Jim and Patty are some of the most intentional leaders I know when it comes to marriage. And so they welcomed anyone to that marriage builders class. And out of that came a lot of conversations about starting another ministry here called Re-Engage. And Re-Engage launched with the launch of the Family Resource Initiative a few years ago now. And well over 100 couples have been through that program, seen their marriages blessed, some marriages absolutely transformed and resurrected, other marriages that have just experienced enrichment, and talk about what a blessing it is. My wife and I have been through the Re-Engage ministry that the Robinsons helped start, and I would tell you for our own marriage, it's been a beautiful gift. And one of the gifts that we were able to give each other last week as we were on vacation was my wife needs my undivided attention. At least once a year, that would be a good thing, right? So I take my cell phone on that trip, and I literally turn it off, and I put it in the suitcase, and it is gone, and I don't have a computer with me, and I don't see it again for 10 days. And it was one of the best 10-day experiences of my life until I turned that stupid thing back on, right, and saw all the emails. But I've got to tell you, every marriage needs intentionality and those reminders of those things that, we know that, right? When you're dating and when you're in that time of your life and you're wooing that spouse, it is amazing how quickly the demands of life can get in the way of what should be next to our relationship with God, our most important relationship on planet Earth. And so really thrilled. Jim had a career as an executive and an attorney, and Patty was a social worker and got licensed as a marriage and family therapist, and Jim has joined her, and together they have started family life coaching. And so not only are they doing premarital counseling, but they work with all sorts of couples around all stages of marriage. And these two are a gift to Wooddale. They also have a son named Kyle, who is a gift to Wooddale because he's our new senior pastor. But I'll tell you, they have another son named Drew, who I've worked with in my real estate life, who is also a pastor. I don't know if you know that about Jim and Patty. He's at a little church called Eagle Brook, and he leads worship at that church. And I've gotten to know Drew well over the years, and you've raised two great boys, and you've got some amazing daughters-in-law and some great grandchildren, and that is a testament to you, too, as a couple. So we're really excited to get to hear from you in just a moment. Before they come up, I do want to let you know what's coming up over the next few weeks. Next week, we have something we've never talked about at a Lunch and Learn. We're going to talk about navigating healthy sexuality, and we have an amazing couple who are going to be speaking with us next week, and I think you're going to enjoy them. Their names are Chris and Elizabeth Hardesty. They are Wooddalers. They attend here. They are part of our Parents of Teenagers class. They work for an organization on the other side of town called Faithful and True, which is a counseling center that comes along people who maybe have addictions to pornography or a sexual addiction, or maybe they come alongside of a couple who have experienced infidelity, and God has used them in those moments to bring healing into relationships that I think most people would say there's not a chance that you're going to get past this. And part of the reason they do that is because of their own testimony. And so I can't wait for you to hear Chris and Elizabeth's story next week. They are courageous leaders. They are leaders who are doing great things. They've been interviewed on shows that are on the radio, on national television and radio shows across the country, and you're going to really, really enjoy hearing from them next week. 2 weeks from now, Steve Johnson is going to be with us. Steve is an Emmy Award-winning producer from CNN and ESPN back over the years. He developed some technology that if you watch football games, you see his technology in every one of those games. And he is a fervent follower of Jesus who just loves God. And his brother is a pastor here in Minnesota. He's part of the Converge conference that Wooddale is a part of. And his brother went through a couple of unbelievable tragedies. His brother's son, his nephew, was murdered. His brother's wife died in an accident. And Steve said, I could continue to produce television shows and do amazing things in sports and news, but I would much rather be by my brother because I think he needs me. So he moved up here to the Twin Cities. But he brought all those gifts for technology with him. And he started an organization called Life Support Resources that has produced really stories of people who have experienced trauma in their life and seen God come into that trauma and do amazing things. And so they have curriculum that focuses around mental health. They have curriculum that focuses around addiction and recovery, but they just have lots of resources, too, around grief. They've written some beautiful books on grief as well. And he's going to be our speaker talking about mess to message, turning your test into a testimony. So like the hard things in your life, how do you take the hard things and let them be a blessing maybe in the lives of others. Like don't waste even the tragedies that we go through in our life. March 6th, Tammy Haveman's going to be with us. She's going to be talking about compassion and the difference that compassion can make in your home, in your workplace, in your neighborhood. Tammy is a professor. She was at Bethel most recently, helping to lead their nursing program and really with nurse practitioners leading that whole part of their program. And she got swiped away recently by Oklahoma Baptist University, but is a phenomenal communicator. Her husband was the chairman of the board at the church that I served at prior to Wooddale, and you're going to love hearing from Tammy. She has been very active in some amazing causes here in the Twin Cities, helped start a couple of organizations that come alongside of children in crisis, and one of the most compassionate people I've ever met. And then finally, March 13th, Todd Mulliken will be back with us. He's going to be talking about 5 ways to bring out the best in your kids. And so those of you who have children or grandchildren, even adult children, you're going to be blessed by Todd. All right, I'm going to just lead us in prayer. We don't do that every week, but I'm going to do that today because there's going to be some information you're going to hear today that I think we sometimes just need to prepare ourselves for it. So God, I thank you so much for Jim and Patty. Thank you for their faithfulness and for the example of marriage that they have set, for the passion that they have to see you preeminent in marriages. God, we believe here at Wooddale Church that you are the hope for the world and that there's not a marriage that is out there that you can't do some amazing things with as we humble ourselves and as we ask you to help us become more like you. So God, today as Jim and Patty share, I pray that you would help us to listen with attentive ears. I pray that you would teach us something new today, and God, that you would just be with them as they speak today. Let them feel your boldness and your courage to share what you've called them to share. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Would you welcome Jim and Patty?
Well, in 1991, our family set sail on our first and last cruise. Our cruise departed New York Harbor bound for Bermuda. We were living in New Jersey at the time, and we were watching the weather on the East Coast, and we noticed that the weatherman said there was a tropical depression that was forming off the coast of North Carolina. So we called the cruise line and we said, is the ship still going to sail? And they said, of course. that the captain would just plot a new course and he would go around the storm. So we boarded with high hopes, and the first night went well. However, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke to the ship doing this. So I woke up Jim and I said, is the ship supposed to be doing this? And he said, oh, you know what, we've just hit a squall, go back to sleep. So not long after, the captain came through the intercom system and said, stay in your cabins no matter what. A steward will be around with crackers and tea for your upset stomachs. Didn't build a lot of confidence. You see, during the night, that tropical depression got a name, and the name was Hurricane Bob. And although our captain had shifted his course, the trajectory of the storm also shifted. So, after a long day of seasickness, we emerged to find devastation in the ship. The dance floor had cracked and heaved. The windows were broken out of every shop window. There was glass everywhere. And we learned that several of the passengers on the ship had broken arms from being tossed about in the high waters. When we arrived at port, we were met with the headlines: Meridian and Horizon cruise ships, 42-foot seas. And then we learned that our companion ship that was sailing alongside of us was within 2 degrees of capsizing. Let's just say some people took alternate transportation home, right? But I tell you this story because sometimes our relationships feel like that. We feel like we're riding the high seas. You know, we don't know when the next wave will hit. And like the cruise ship captain, we try to plot a new course, but then the trajectory of our relationships change. So Jim and I are life coaches that specialize in relationships and relationships education. And we've experienced in our work with couples and families 4 themes that either build up your relationship or will harm it if they are not done. So we call these 4 C's the crucial C's, or the high C's of relationship. And they are the need that we all have to connect and belong. You know, people come to us and they say, oh, I think we just have a communication problem, or we have a conflict management problem. But many times that's not the problem. The problem is they have a connection problem, and that connection problem is causing their communication difficulties. And then we all want to know that we count. We want to know that we are significant to another person, that we are a priority, that we matter. And when one person in the relationship feels that they are not a priority, the relationship suffers. The 3rd C is being capable and having self-confidence. You know, when we're in a relationship where a person is controlling, acts superior, puts us down, think they always have the answers, the result is a lack of capability to the other person and a lack of self-confidence. It erodes the other person's self-confidence. And then finally, we think that relationships should take a lot of courage. Oftentimes, relationships fall apart because there's a lack of courage to handle difficult situations and difficult issues. So people disconnect. Alfred Adler, who was one of the fathers of modern psychology, said people need 2 things. They need to belong, and they need to feel significant. So this need to belong and feel significant refers to a fundamental human desire to be accepted and valued by others, to feel like we're important to others, to feel like we're a part of a group or a community, and to have a sense of purpose or importance in life. Essentially, it's this ingrained psychological drive to connect with others and be recognized for one's value and contributions. So let's begin with this need for connection.
All right, so this afternoon, as we get started with this, I thought we'd have a little bit of fun and play a little game. So are any of you familiar with the game show Let's Make a Deal? Yeah, okay, a few of you. Okay, all right, so we're going to play Let's Make a Deal. So I have a deal for all of you out here today. So here's the deal. The deal is you are going to get to design your very own personal paradise. Okay? So think about that a minute. Now, I'm going to show you, if I were to design my own personal paradise, this is kind of a picture of what it might look like, right? I want a warm tropical island somewhere. I want a beautiful beach. I want lots of warm water, lots of palm trees. So that's kind of what mine would look like. But I want you to take a few moments. If you want to close your eyes and do it, that's fine. But think about what would be your personal paradise. Would it look a little bit like mine? Or might it be up in the mountains somewhere? Maybe you want a beautiful mountain chalet or a mountain cabin somewhere. Or maybe you want a big farmstead or a big ranch somewhere with thousands of acres, right? Or maybe for some of you it's a bustling city center. That might be your idea of what a personal paradise would be. But kind of picture what that might look like, right, as part of this deal, because you get to design it exactly the way that you want it. Now, the other thing is, I want you to think about what kind of stuff do you want with you there? Because you get to bring whatever things you want into your paradise. They're going to be all yours. You own it, nobody else. And if something breaks or goes wrong, somebody else is going to take care of it. You don't have to even worry about that. All right, so where would it be? What things do you want with you? And what would you want to do there? Because you get to decide what you get to do in your own personal paradise. All right? Now let's think about that. What would you like to do with that, right? Oh, and here's the other good news, is God will be with you in your paradise. Okay? So let me ask you, based on all that, who would like to take that deal? Who wants that deal? Who wants to design all of that themselves? Brian does. We got a few. Okay, we got a few takers. I think we still have some skeptics out there. I see some frowns. Somebody's wondering, where's the other shoe going to drop? Well, there is one condition. Okay? So here's the one condition you have to meet if you want that personal paradise as I set out for you. Okay? The condition is you cannot take anybody else with you in your paradise forever. No spouses, no kids, no grandkids, no friends, nobody else. It's just you and God. Now, who wants to show of hands? Who wants that deal? How come? Why wouldn't you want that deal? Give me some ideas. What are some? I want to hear from some of you. Who's brave enough to tell me? Why wouldn't you want that deal? Because you love people. Oh, so you want to be around people then, huh? Okay. All right, good. Anybody else? Anything else? Yeah, go ahead. You might try it for a while. But you don't want to try. But the deal is you got to have it forever, right? Yeah, now you're not so. No, I don't think so, right? Right. So in essence, what this has done is it kind of have brought us to the first crisis in creation, hasn't it? In essence, I put you in the same position that Adam found himself in the Garden of Eden, right? Because God had created everything, and God said everything in creation was good except for one thing. God said it wasn't good for man to be alone. In fact, in Genesis 2, 18 to 23, here's what Scripture tells us. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper or a companion suitable for him. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. And then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. So you see, from the very beginning, from creation, we have been created to connect with other people. Right? So this idea of connection is just innate to us. You know, we can meet our basic needs of food, water, air, shelter. We actually can do that alone. What we can't do is we cannot meet alone this biological need that we have for connection with other people. Because when we connect in healthy ways, then we're going to generally be a healthier person. We're going to have more energy. We'll have more flexibility. We'll have this sense of creativity and a sense of kind of responsibility for ourselves and a capacity for intimacy with other people. But when we're not connecting, or when our attachment and our bonding with other people are not met, those needs aren't met, then this is when we can experience depression, loneliness, and addictions. And frankly, studies have indicated that lonely people will have less restful sleep, they'll have higher blood pressure, they'll have elevated levels of cortisol and epinephrine in their systems, and all of that leads to a weakened immune system and inflammation in our bodies. And so, in fact, the U.S. Surgeon General has even come out with a study very recently where he said, in America, we have a loneliness epidemic. And, here's the really sad news about that. In that report, it said many adults report that the loneliest place is inside their marriages and in their families. So that's a sad statistic that we have. Now, right here in Minnesota, Professor Bill Daugherty, who's at the University of Minnesota, had recently done a study, and he found that 68% of couples who show up in a therapist's office for marital therapy say the reason they are there, not because there was an affair, anything like that, 68% said, we've lost connection. We have drifted apart, okay? And it makes sense. If a wife feels like that her husband is just constantly putting his career above his home life and above his relationship with her, she's going to feel a loss of connection. And likewise, if a husband feels like that his wife is always putting the needs of the kids above any of his needs, he's also likely to feel this loss of connection. It can happen with our kids. If our kids feel like that they're kind of being put off because mom and dad have got too many other things to be doing, then they can feel a loss of connection with the family. As we age, we can sometimes feel a loss of connection with our adult kids if they're so busy with their careers and with their own families that they don't have time to connect with us, then we feel this loss of connection. So many times in our relationships, as Pat had said earlier, we tend to focus on, well, the problem is we just don't communicate well, or we don't know how to manage through our conflict. Now, that may be true, but what's really underneath that, what the real core of the problem is this sense of a loss of connection and a sense of belonging to one another. And sometimes we just get so busy that we just don't take the time to bond, and yet it's that one thing, it's that connection that will really help us deal with the stress of being busy in our lives, and it's the best remedy for depression. So now we can connect with other people through a lot of different ways. Shared interest, shared values, shared beliefs, and today we're not going to try to go through all of that. But there's one area that we want to talk to you a little bit about what you could do to focus on how to connect in your marriage and in other intimate relationships that you've got, and it's through something that we call rituals of connection.
So there's a new book out, just hit the press. It's called Our New Social Life by authors Kurtz and Kerr. And they found through their research that most people feel like connection today is a luxury. In fact, their study indicated that we're only in a deep connection with someone else 34 minutes a day. And that includes your time at work, your time with your family, your time with your friends. We're really only truly connecting 34 minutes a day. So no wonder there's an epidemic of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So one way to make connections is to practice what we call rituals of connection. So a ritual of connection is a deliberate shared activity or practice. It's between two partners or their families that help to build intimacy and create a deeper bond within a relationship. It involves consistent moments of focused interaction. It can be something as simple as sharing meals or how we say good morning and good night to one another. It can be a weekly date, or it might be a more formal tradition, taking a cruise once a year with your spouse. But the key points of this ritual of connection is that it's intentional, that it is a shared experience where both people are participating. It can be large or small. It can be as simple as a morning hug or as complicated as a yearly anniversary trip. But the goal of it is to build intimacy. And regularly engaging in these rituals helps to deepen your emotional connection, and it builds understanding of one another. So here are some ideas. The morning greetings. You know, you take a moment in the morning to connect before you go off on your day. That can be a hug or a quick conversation. But how you greet one another in the morning is really important, and it can become this ritual of connection. So a few months ago, Jim started saying, when he saw me first thing in the morning, "Hello, beautiful." Well, I know what I look like in the morning, and it's not beautiful. But that ritual of connection starts my day on a really high note. I guess I should start saying, "Hi, handsome," back.
Well, that'd be nice.
Then an evening debriefing. When you come together at the end of the day, have what we call the thorns and roses conversation. And you can do this with your kids and your grandkids. Recently, I was with my nieces. I hadn't seen them for a long time, and I said, let's do thorns and roses. The thorns are the sticky part of your life, the sticky part of your day, the thing that was kind of pokey. And the rose is the sweet-smelling thing that happened to you that day, the thing that was sweet and beautiful. It's a great way to connect. And, of course, any marital advice you ever get will tell you to have a date night. So, enough said there. Physical touch. Regular, affectionate, just gestures. It can be hand-holding or cuddling. You know, when Jim and I first started to date, we went to church together, and he would reach over and hold my hand during prayer time. We still do that today. Whenever we are praying together, we hold hands. We just did it in the parking lot before we came in. And I know that if Jim passes before I do, that will be one of the things that will cause me the most grief because I will miss it the most. So think about small acts done often. Then shared hobbies. Engaging in activities you both enjoy helps build a connection, of course. But what if you're like us and you like very different things? Well, just entering into one another's worlds. You know, Jim's a scuba diver. He goes with our sons, and they have a great time. I am petrified. It seems to me that breathing underneath the water is not a natural act, and I really don't like it. So Jim and the boys scuba dive, but I want to be there. When Jim comes up after a dive, I want to hear all the things he saw, and I will hold the towels, I will cheer him on, but I want to enter into his world. And he's probably not going to go to my watercolor painting class with me, but I get really excited when I share with him and he says, frame it, right? So celebrate milestones. This is another way to create great connections. Marking birthdays, anniversaries, or achievements with a special tradition. We don't think these things matter, but they do. When we were first married, I failed to make Jim a birthday cake one year, and I could tell he was just in a real funk about it. And then I realized, oh, a birthday cake was a really big deal in his family of origin, that his mother baked him a really special cake every year, and so much so that when we were dating in college, on his birthday, from Jackson, Mississippi, he received a pound cake from his mother. The light bulb went on. Oh, this is an important ritual of connection. You know, our social norms today are breeding disconnection. 90% of people surveyed said that they are on their devices at least one time when they're with someone else in a social interaction. They're not even sometimes conscious of it. They just pick up their phone. Oh, got a text, pick it up, put it down. But this small act causes the people that we're with to seem like they don't matter. Our phone matters more. So we want to talk about this importance of helping people to feel significant in the relationships that you have with them. Connection gives people a sense of belonging.
Okay, so let's move on to kind of our second point around what does it mean to count. So really when you think about this, it's how do we make other people feel that they count and are significant in our lives? And this can be really important. You know, sometimes there can kind of be two kinds of people. And you've probably seen folks like this. There are some people that kind of walk into a room and it's like, well, here I am. And then there's people that walk in and say, oh, there you are. Right? And that kind of a person, and being that kind of person, makes other people feel that they count and are significant. You know, recently, we went up to visit our other set of granddaughters and a grandson, and they live 40, 45 minutes away. So as we were driving up, our granddaughter knew that we were coming. And so as we pull up to the house, she's sitting in a little child-sized chair on the front porch waiting for us. And as the car pulls into the driveway, she jumps out of the chair. She runs up to the car. She's yelling out, Grammy, Grammy, Grandpa. Well, let me tell you, in that moment, we felt like we really counted, right? We counted to her. So when we feel like that we count or are valued, it's usually because a person has made us a priority and made us feel special or important. And sometimes we don't do that. We get away from that in our relationships where the other person feels like they're really a priority to us because we let other things get in the way. We have a friend who calls us every year on our anniversary. And yes, he has been calling us for 49 years. And he just calls and he says, hey, I just remember I know this is a special day for you guys and I've been thinking about you. So when we can remember birthdays, anniversaries, deaths of family members, any significant life events, what that says is to the other person is that, hey, you're important, you count, you're significant in my life.
Yeah, we underestimate how much others appreciate our efforts in building in them this sense of significance. You know, people are going to gravitate toward the places where they feel wanted and significant. If we experience more acceptance and a place of belonging at work than we do in our homes, we're going to work more hours. If our kids feel more significance, acceptance, and a sense of belonging with their peers than at home, they're going to spend more time with their peers. So it's really important to have these places, these safe places of belonging and significance. You know, we know that a lot of people, when they retire, experience this. They think, oh, you know, retirement is going to be smooth sailing. But then they retire and they realize they miss that sense of belonging and they miss the sense of significance. So how do you apply principles of helping others to feel they count and are significant? What are some things that you all do? We want to hear from you. What are things that you have done to help others feel significant? Like they count, they matter.
That's really good, yeah. That makes him, he's obviously keeps coming back, right? So he feels like, hey, I belong and I'm significant and I count. Yeah, that's good. Other ideas, other things? I'm sorry.
Say more.
Well, I'm a gift giver, obviously, so it doesn't have to be like an annual occasion, but I have like
Okay, so giving them gifts and that. Yeah.
I have to interrupt her. I need you to stand up really quick because I'm the person behind you right now. So she has a sweatshirt that says, "Dear person behind me, the world is a better place with you in it. Love the person in front of you." I think that makes
Oh, that's very good. Very good, Brian. Thank you. Very nice. I like that. That's a great sweatshirt.
Yes. For sure.
Yeah,
Making
that-
eye contact. Yes. Oh, awesome. Yes. Well, and that you remember what they like. So hold that thought because we're going to go there next.
Yeah, food's another love language, I think, right? Yeah.
Oh, Jan, that is so, that's exactly what we're talking about. It takes 1 minute, but that's something between the two of you that builds intimacy, where you say, I see you, you're important. You might not be part of this conversation, but you're important. Yeah. So you had mentioned having your grandkids' favorite foods when they come over. And that is part of keeping what we call a love map, and that's where we're going next. So what is a love map? So a love map is knowing a person's likes, dislikes, dreams, fears, past experience, and other details that make them who they are. You know, it's been said that to know and be known is a lot like feeling loved and being loved. Being known helps us to feel significant and that we matter to someone else. So here's some examples of a love map. Some things that you could see. Are these things you know about your loved one? Do you know their two closest friends? Can you name their hobbies? Can you describe in detail the day of your loved one, how they spend their day? What do they do when they go to work? What stresses them out? What fills them with joy? What's their fondest unrealized dream? Really important to know that one. What is one of your loved one's greatest fears? What's their disaster scenario? Their favorite way to spend an evening? What's the best way to soothe them when they're upset? What's their ideal job? Do they worry about any medical problems? And then finally, do you know their favorite foods? Do you know their favorite music genre, their favorite book, their favorite movie? And then you keep those things in your head. And when you have an opportunity, you let them know that you have noticed those things about them. So I was thinking about when Jim and I were first married, he gave me a recording of a Broadway musical. And I wasn't sure that he even knew how much I loved Broadway musicals. But that gift touched me so much. You see, he was starting to keep a love map on me, and that felt really good. So, the third C. Let's go to the third C. This is the need to build capability and confidence in one another. You know, if we're in a relationship and one person has to be right all the time, or when they need to make all the important decisions, or if they have an attitude of superiority, that erodes the relationship so quickly. Because it invites the other to feel like they're not significant, they're not capable, and it erodes their self-confidence. If one person in the relationship is highly assertive and has great self-confidence, but the other is low in assertion and low in self-confidence, that person that's low in self-confidence and assertion will feel like they are being steamrolled. And it doesn't make for a good relationship. It's so important to build one another up and for both parties to feel capable and confident and share decision-making. So again, we're going to open it up for you. Who in your life has ever helped you to build a sense of competency or build your self-confidence? What did they do?
Go ahead. Okay.
So you call every day, and that kind of keeps you connected and gives you a sense of significance. Yeah. And that builds your confidence because you know you have someone in your corner. Bless her heart. Wow. You get up at 4 in the morning so you can talk to her? Wow, that's a connection.
Who else? What else?
Okay, who has helped you? Peg. Teachers.
Yeah, that's really good, because that way you felt capable. It helps you feel like, oh, I'm capable of doing this. I
Yes.
can do more. Yeah, that's good. Anybody else? Any other stories you want to share?
Okay, so how do we do this? How do we help one another besides the things that have been mentioned? What else can we do?
Yeah, so what are some other ideas, and what are ways that you can build this idea of capability and self-confidence into your spouse? How can we help each other do this? Because this is very important in a marriage and in a relationship. So the first one we've got up there is identify strengths. So really think about this and focus on what you feel like your spouse does really well, or a particular character trait that you really appreciate in them, but then communicate that to them, because mind reading isn't a spiritual gift. So sometimes we're thinking it, but we don't say it to people, right? We don't say it to our spouses, so say it and be specific. So, for example, it's one thing if I say to Pat, you know, you're a very kind and caring person. Now, okay, that sounds good. She'll like that. But what is even more impactful is if I say, not only are you a kind and caring person, but I saw you demonstrate this last weekend with our granddaughter when you were encouraging her after that basketball loss that they had. Now, see, that's a specific example, and it has much more weight and impact to it, doesn't it? And that's what we need to look for, those opportunities where we can do that with each other, because this will build each other up in terms of your feeling to be capable and your self-confidence.
Celebrate achievements. Acknowledge even the small wins that someone has at work or in a relationship, if their relationship is improving, celebrate it. If a child brings home a letter grade that's higher than the last one, celebrate it. Bake a cake, make a banner, write a note, but celebrate those achievements. That helps to build a sense of capability and self-confidence.
So this next area is one that we all have the opportunity to do within our families, within our marriages, within our relationships, and that's to build a culture of appreciation. And it's never too late to start that. It's never too late to build that, right? And so what's very interesting about this is marital researchers, John and Julie Gottman, they have been studying marriages and relationships for over 45 years. And they've developed a lot of theories about what makes relationships work and work well. And one of the things that they have come up with is kind of what we call the magic formula for success in relationships. And that magic formula is actually a ratio. And they found in those relationships that work the best, there are 20 affirmations to every one criticism or complaint that you make to your spouse. So I want you to think about that a minute. 20 affirmations, that means some way of affirming the other person, of giving positive attention to them, or giving some show of affection to them. So one of those three areas. 20 of those, for every one time you have something that you feel like you got to bring up that you're complaining about or that you're critical about. So that's a big ratio. That takes intentionality, and you have to be deliberate about it. But it works. And so keep that in mind and really focus on that. What that does, it creates within the relationship this culture of appreciation instead of the opposite, where you feel like it's always, things are always negative or being critical.
Seek supportive people. Determine that you are going to surround yourself with people who are for you and for your relationships. And be determined to have some people in your life who will challenge you, who will challenge you to take responsibility for yourself and your part in the relationship failure or success. You know, when we were newlyweds, we lived in a duplex. We lived upstairs and our landlady lived below us. And Jim and I did not know how to do conflict. And I would let things build up, but then I would explode. And she often, I'm sure, heard our arguments because the vents were right there, and I'm sure that went right down to her listening ears. But one day I was sitting on the porch with her, and she looked me right in the eye, and she said, "Patty Robinson, you have to decide whether you are on Jim Robinson's team or whether you're the opposition. That young man is going to go places, and if I were you, I'd get on his team. So that means you need to change some of your behavior." Oh. But she loved me enough to tell me the truth. And actually, it was encouraging. It actually gave me hope that I could change my behavior, that we could have a different marriage.
I love that woman, by the way.
She loved Jim.
Yeah, was not my mom.
It was our landlady. Yeah.
Who was not my mom.
She wanted to be his mom, though. Encouragement is the act of giving someone support, confidence, or hope. So the root word for encouragement is, guess what? Courage. And that leads us to our last point in having courageous relationships.
Okay, so we're going to talk about courage. And courage is defined as really the ability to do something difficult or face a challenge, even if it's scary or risky. And for many of us, sometimes our relationships can be scary, or they can feel scary. Because really, there is no guarantee that those that we love are going to love us back, or even love us back in the way that we want to be loved or feel that we should be loved. So as a result, we can kind of fear rejection. We can feel the loss of the relationship. So this fear of rejection can sometimes keep us from having difficult conversations and keep us from dealing with the conflict that comes up in relationships. So we can fear that we might not be heard by the other person, that we might be misunderstood. Maybe we're going to be ridiculed or made to feel like that our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions just are somehow wrong, or that there's something wrong with us, right? So we can also fear that the relationship might be permanently harmed if we have this conflict. Now, it may also be that we're just generally uncomfortable with dealing with conflict because we don't know how to handle it in a healthy, productive manner. So as a result of some of this fear that we may have, our response to that and how we behave can demonstrate this kind of lack of courage in the relationship. So we might behave by simply going out of our way to avoid the conflict and just say, yep, I'm not going to have that conversation, I'm just going to avoid it. Or if we're in a conflict, we may give in too quickly and end up accepting all the blame and all the responsibility for all the problems in the relationship. That's not healthy. Or we may just stay silent, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I'm not going to say anything. Or we can stonewall. Now, stonewalling means that we are deliberately disengaging from having these conversations, okay? And men, we're particularly good about this. We can physically leave the room. We can either mentally shut down and just not engage in the conversation, or we can use distractions to try to redirect the conversation to some other issues rather than dealing with what the core issue really is. And none of these are productive ways to really effectively handle conflict. So this lack of courage and this fear that we have around conflict may also be because maybe our belief about the purpose of conflict is flawed. So many of us think the purpose, if we get in a conflict, is, well, I've got to win, or I've got to be right, and that's not the purpose of conflict. The purpose of good conflict is to have a better understanding of the other person. So if you can come out of it with a better understanding of your spouse, you actually will grow your emotional intimacy between the two of you. But it's not to win. So if we can kind of gain a different or a new perspective on conflict and realize and look at it as it's really the soil of love, and it's not something bad that we have to avoid, that can help give us the courage we need. And then if we get the right tools along with the courage, then we can do it better and do it more productively. So, and another reason why this is so important is if we don't manage through our conflicts well, we are never going to get our differences resolved between the two of us. And if our differences don't get resolved, this is going to create emotional distance between a husband and a wife, and the connection is going to suffer. Remember what I said at the beginning about why 68% of couples show up in a therapist's office? Because this connection, it's because they have not worked through a lot of these things and they have emotionally drifted apart. So how do we go about giving one another courage to have these tough conversations and have productive conflict? So we got a couple ideas for you.
So one idea is to set the stage for a courageous conversation by making it emotionally safe. If you need to confront your spouse or a family member, do so by making a complaint, not a criticism. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, oh, that sounds a lot alike. Well, let me show you the differences. We're going to talk about the differences, and then I'll show you. A complaint is a specific issue based on a specific behavior. A criticism blames, shames, and judges another person. Criticism attacks a person's character and will lead them to be defensive. It won't go in a good direction. So you tell me if this is a criticism or a complaint. I'm going to make one to Jim. You know how I hate being late to church. And if you would just get your lazy self out of bed on Sunday morning, we might be able to make it on time. But oh no, that's your day to sleep in, and you don't care. You don't care if I'm embarrassed. You don't care if we're late.
Youch.
Criticism or complaint? Right, criticism. Okay, so let's try this again. Hey, honey, I feel embarrassed when we come into church late. I'm wondering if we can come up with a plan together so that we can get out of the door sooner. I'm not sure what's holding us up. It's not just you. Sometimes it's me, too. But I'm wondering what we can do together let's get a strategy. Let's work together on that.
Okay, much better, huh?
Yeah. So if you are in a relationship with someone who is very highly critical, one way that you can diffuse the situation is by taking ownership. So even if I came in hot to Jim, he could say to me, oh, you know what, you're right. I do sometimes want to sleep in on Sunday mornings. I take responsibility for that. That diffuses everything, and the conversation would go in another direction. And finally, just take snarkiness out of your relationship. It has no place in any of our relationships.
All right, so one other way that you can kind of impart or give courage to another person is permitting them to fail, okay? So permitting to fail means that you're creating an environment for them where you're allowed to make mistakes and have experience setbacks without there necessarily always being negative consequences. And encouraging them to take risks, learn from their mistakes, it helps promote kind of a growth mindset in other people versus prioritizing just perfect execution. It's better that you learn than necessarily always have perfect execution. So you can kind of think of it this way, is that, well, either I'm going to succeed or I am going to learn, right? Thomas Edison, when he was inventing the light bulb, had 1,000 unsuccessful attempts at that. And he was later quoted as saying, well, I won't say I failed 1,000 times, I'll say I found 1,000 ways it won't work. Right? So he learned the difference, right? And learned from his mistakes and learned from the prototypes. So this afternoon, we've kind of covered a lot of different points about what can cause the high seas in your relationships and some things that maybe you can do to try to calm the waters down. And what I want to say is, please don't think you look at all these things and think, oh man, I got to start doing all these things. I got to implement all of this. I got to do them all right all the time. That's not true. And so I want to encourage you with something. Marital research shows that for couples, you only need to do one or two things well about 40% of the time. So not even half of the time. But if you can do that, you can positively change the direction of your relationship. So if you're really trying and something doesn't work, just give each other grace and keep trying. So I would encourage you, maybe pick one or two of these things and say, let's try that. I want to try that. So for couples, it's really about making small changes done often. That's what changes the trajectory of the marriage. It's not a great big thing. It's small small things done often will be the best for you. Okay? So as we kind of start to wrap up, I want you to consider, are you going through, if you're in some stormy seas, is it because there's a lack of connection with you and your spouse and the other person? Do others feel like that they really count and are significant in your life? Are you helping your spouse or others feel really capable and self-confident? And are you giving courage to each other? Or are you lacking courage in some areas and find it hard to have these necessary conversations in your relationship? So again, as we kind of close up, I just say as you're kind of sailing these seas of relationships, I really encourage you, look underneath the waves, look underneath the water, and see if some of those waves are maybe being caused by some of your actions, and what are some things you can do to kind of calm the waters down. Okay? So that's it from us. Thanks for your input and comments, and we got a few minutes. We can take some questions if anybody's got any.
I'm going to take one of these microphones to take those questions. So if you have a question, would you raise your hand, and I will bring it your way. Questions or comments? Yeah, I'll come right over here.
In relationships with grandchildren right now, we are pretty thickly into that because of their ages and so on. We've been trying, we're trying to initiate a thing where we take them one at a time out for a meal, but then we play, you could call it 20 questions, where we get to ask them questions, they ask us questions, but they're not allowed to be questions that you can answer with a yes or a no. And so it has a lot of possibilities, but they are, I'm not just a proud grandma, they are successful kids. And what they participate in, ski racing, gymnastics, and so on, they often win. And how do you convey to them that, really well done if you win, but we are so proud of you for participating, so that they don't start to think that their performance is how to define themselves and see themselves.
Yes, so I would reflect it back to them always first. How did you feel you did? Sometimes kids and people can become performance junkies when we say things to them like, I am so proud of you. You are so, blah, 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 blah. It's much better because that's praise. Praise only belongs to Jesus Christ. But we can affirm and encourage by saying to them, are you proud of you? What did you do well? What do you wish you would have done differently? But how do you feel? Put it back on them first. And of course, they already know we're proud of them. We're there, we're cheering them on. But, I think we can cross over the line sometimes by saying, I'm so proud of you. Well, that's what creates performance anxiety because they're looking for our approval. And what they need is internal approval, that I did this well. I did it to the best of my ability. So just try to, there's a difference between praise and encouragement. Encouragement will turn it back on the other person. Praise is all about how you feel about them. So turn it back on how they feel about them. Does that make sense?
Great answer. All right. We have time for one more today. So last question. Who's got it today? Otherwise, Jim and Patty, you have given us some nuggets today that are just fantastic. I love every time these two speak. Would you give them a hand? And you've got some phenomenal notes. And I apologize, I didn't have those to you at the beginning. We literally had them sitting at our desk in the back office there and said, oh, we've got phenomenal notes for you that our speakers provided a couple days ago. So we were just too far ahead of schedule this week. But that's what you get when you have great prepared speakers. Again, next week, we've got a great topic with Chris and Elizabeth Hardesty. Would encourage you to come and think about those who might need to hear about navigating healthy sexuality. And it is going to be a great, great topic. And then a couple weeks from now, we'll talk about turning mess into testimony. And so you're going to hear just some great, great teaching there. All right. Thank you for being with us. Jim and Patty, are you willing to stick around if people have a couple questions? Great. So they will be up front here if you want to talk with them. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.